Previously on Omega's Romance Libraries. Maya Wilson sent a desperate text to the wrong number, and Korean Mafia boss Kang Minho answered. He saved her from her abusive husband Thomas, claimed her as his own, and revealed an obsession 5 years in the making. But when Thomas kidnapped her brother Julian, Maya realized her nightmare was far from over. Maya's world tilted. The phone slipped from her hand, but Minho caught it before it hit the floor, his movements liquid fast. He studied the screen, his expression shifting back to that terrible emptiness she'd seen in his office. No, his voice was flat, final. That's my brother. Maya lunged for the phone, but he held it out of reach with insulting ease. He has Julian. I have to. You have to do nothing. Minho pocketed the phone. This is a trap, an obvious, desperate trap. I don't care. Her voice cracked, hysteria creeping in at the edges. That's my brother, Minho, my family, the only family I have left. Then Thomas dies, simple, certain, but you don't go anywhere. Maya tried to push past him. He caught her wrist, the good one, and held her in place with enough pressure to stop her, but not enough to hurt. The restraint was somehow worse than force would have been. Let me go. No. He'll kill Julian. He won't. Minho pulled her closer, his free hand coming up to grip her chin, forcing her to meet his eyes. Because Thomas needs leverage. The moment your brother dies, he loses his only card. He's not stupid enough to throw that away. You don't know that, you can't. I know men like him. I've killed men like him. The words were matter-of-fact, clinical. He wants you to panic, to run to him, to give him exactly what he wants because you're terrified and emotional and not thinking clearly. Then what do I do? The question came out broken, desperate. Just let my brother sit there, tied up, waiting to die. No, Minho released her chin but didn't let go of her wrist. You let me handle it. I have people. I don't want your people. Maya yanked against his grip, futile as fighting a steel cable. I want my brother safe. I want this to be over. I want. She broke, just shattered. 2 weeks of terror and pain and confusion and impossible desire came crashing down, and suddenly she was sobbing against Minho's chest while he held her, his arms a cage and a sanctuary at once. I know, he murmured against her hair. I know. They stood like that for a long moment, her crying, him holding her, until Maya's tears ran dry. Maya pulled back from Minho's embrace, wiping her face with her good hand. Something harder took the place of her tears. Teach me. Minho's eyes narrowed. Teach you what? How to fight back, how to, she gestured helplessly. Whatever it is you do, I can't just be helpless. I can't just wait and hope. If Thomas comes for me, I need to be ready. Something flickered across his face, approval maybe, or satisfaction that she was finally seeing the world the way he did. Brutal, unforgiving, survival of the most ruthless. Now, she met his gaze unflinching. I need to know I can protect myself, that I'm not just waiting to be rescued again. He studied her for a long moment, then nodded once. Come with me. He led her to a room she hadn't seen before, smaller, lined with weapons displayed like art. Blades of every size, some ceremonial, some clearly functional. Minho selected one, a small knife with a black handle, deceptively simple. A blade is intimate, he said, turning back to her. More intimate than a gun. You have to be close, you have to be committed. There's no taking it back once you start. He moved behind her, and Maya's breath hitched as his body aligned with hers. His chest against her back, his arms coming around to guide her hands. The knife felt foreign in her palm, cold and purposeful. Your instinct will be to slash. His breath was warm against her neck, raising goosebumps down her spine. That's wrong. You thrust up and in. Here. His hand guided hers to his own ribs, showing her the vulnerable spots on his body with disturbing casualness. Or here. He moved her hand higher to his throat. Quick, decisive, no hesitation. I can't. You can. His other hand splayed across her stomach, holding her against him. Your husband broke your arm, terrorized you, and now he has your brother. Tell me you can't imagine putting a blade in him." Maya closed her eyes, and the truth was she could imagine it. God help her, she could. "Good girl." The praise in his voice was dark, possessive. "Feel that? That's power, that's survival, that's what it takes to exist in my world." He adjusted her grip, his fingers warm and calloused over hers. "Again, show me." She thrust forward, the movement clumsy but committed. He corrected her angle, his hands patient and sure, his body a solid presence behind hers. Again. She did it again. And again. Each repetition smoother, more natural, until the blade felt less like a foreign object and more like an extension of her will. Now faster. His voice dropped lower, intimate and commanding at once. "Don't think, just react." She thrust, and he caught her wrist mid-strike, spinning her around so fast she gasped. Suddenly they were face to face, the blade between them, her pulse hammering in her throat. "Your enemy won't wait for you to be ready," Minho said softly. "Neither will I." He released her wrist, and Maya realized she was still holding the knife, pointed at his chest. One push, that's all it would take. "Do it," he challenged. "If you really want to leave, if you really think you can save your brother alone, put the blade in me and walk out. I won't stop you." They stood frozen, the knife between them like a terrible choice made physical. Maya's hand shook. Then she lowered the blade. Minho's smile was slow, triumphant, devastating. "That's what I thought." He took the knife from her nerveless fingers and set it aside. "Your brother will be fine. I'll have him extracted before dawn. But you," he cupped her face, his thumb tracing her lower lip, "you stay here with me, where you belong." "I hate you," she whispered. "No," his forehead pressed against hers. "You hate that you don't." Julian was returned unharmed 6 hours later, delivered to a safe house with no memory of who'd rescued him. Minho's men had been surgical, in and out before Thomas even knew his leverage had vanished. But the message was clear. Thomas was desperate, sloppy, running out of moves. That's when Minho proposed the trap. "A charity gala," he said over breakfast 3 days later, as casual as if he were suggesting a movie. "The Riverside Foundation's annual benefit. Black tie, cameras everywhere. The city's elite. You'll perform." Maya's coffee cup froze halfway to her lips. "I haven't played in public in 2 years." "I know." His eyes held that familiar intensity, the look that said he'd already decided and was simply allowing her to catch up. "Which makes your return even more newsworthy. Every media outlet will cover it. Every social platform will stream it, including the ones Thomas monitors obsessively. You want to use me as bait, not a question. I want to use you as a queen making her first public appearance." He leaned back in his chair, immaculate as always in a slate-gray suit that probably cost more than her childhood home. "Thomas can't touch you in a room full of witnesses and cameras, but he won't be able to stay away either. His ego won't allow it. He needs to see you, to remind himself you're his property that got away." "And then what?" "Then we end this. Simple, final, terrifying." The gala was in 4 days. Minho gave her access to the music room without restriction, and Maya spent every waking hour relearning how to make her injured arm cooperate. The brace had come off, but the muscles were weak, the tendons still healing. Every note was a negotiation between will and limitation. Minho watched her practice. He never interrupted, just sat in the corner with his laptop, conducting his empire while she fought with her cello. Sometimes she'd catch him starring, his expression unreadable, and the air would thicken with unspoken words. On the night before the gala, he came to her room with a garment bag. "Tomorrow you'll need armor," he said, laying it on the bed. "Open it." The gown inside stole her breath. Deep crimson, not bright red, but something darker, richer. The color of wine, or dried roses, or blood in low light. The fabric was liquid silk that caught the light like water, with a neckline that would bare her shoulders and a slit that would reveal leg with every step. It was a weapon disguised as clothing. "It's perfect," she whispered. "I know." He produced a jewelry box, small and black. "One more thing." The necklace inside was deceptively simple, a thin platinum chain with a single red stone that matched the dress exactly. Beautiful, elegant, innocent. "GPS tracker in the clasp," Minho explained, lifting it from the box. "Microphone in the stone. I'll hear everything. See everything through the venue's cameras. If Thomas gets within 10 feet of you, I'll know." He moved behind her, and Maya's pulse kicked as his fingers brushed her neck, fastening the chain. His breath was warm against her skin, his presence overwhelming in the intimate space. "You'll be magnificent tomorrow," he murmured. "Everyone will see what I've known for 5 years, that you're not a victim, you're a force of nature." Maya turned to face him, and the intensity in his eyes made her dizzy. "What if I freeze? What if I see him and I can't?" "You won't freeze." His hands framed her face with devastating gentleness. "Because you're not the woman who sent that text anymore. You're the woman who held a blade to my chest and chose to lower it. You're the woman who plays music like she's conjuring fire. You're mine, Maya, and what's mine doesn't break." The kiss was inevitable. Slower this time, deeper, his hand sliding into her hair while hers fisted in his shirt. When he pulled away, they were both breathing hard. "Tomorrow," he said, his voice rough, "you perform. You remind the world who you are, and then we finish this." The gala was exactly as promised. Excessive, elegant, swarming with the kind of people who wore their wealth like a second skin. Maya arrived in Minho's car, the red dress clinging to her curves, her hair styled in an updo that showed off the necklace. Cameras flashed as Minho helped her out, his hand possessive at the small of her back. "Smile," he murmured. "Show them you're untouchable." She did, and the cameras loved it. Backstage was controlled chaos, musicians warming up, coordinators speaking urgently into headsets, the energy electric and anxious. Maya's hands shook as she rosined her bow, but it wasn't stage fright. It was anticipation. Her phone buzzed, a text from Minho, who'd taken his seat in the audience. "He's here, back right corner, security uniform. I have eyes on him." Maya's blood turned cold. She looked toward the stage entrance, could see the audience through the gap in the curtains. Hundreds of people in formal wear, champagne glasses catching light, the murmur of conversation like distant waves. And there, exactly where Minho said, stood Thomas. He'd somehow acquired a security uniform, probably through his brother's connections, and positioned himself where he could watch the stage. Even from this distance, she could see his smile. Confident, possessive, the smile of a man who thought he'd already won. He thought she was still his. Still, the terrified woman who'd hidden in a bathroom while he broke down the door. He hadn't accounted for what 3 weeks in a glass tower with a monster had done to her. The stage manager touched her shoulder. "You're on in 2 minutes, Miss Wilson." Maya stood, cello in hand, and felt the weight of the necklace against her collarbone. Minho was listening, watching, ready. "I'm ready," she said. She walked onto that stage like she was walking into battle. The lights were blinding, the audience a dark sea of faces, but she found her chair, positioned her cello, and looked up. Thomas was still smiling. The conductor raised his baton. Maya closed her eyes, placed her bow against the strings, and began to play. The music that poured out wasn't the delicate, controlled performance she'd planned. It was fire and fury, grief and rage. Every emotion she'd buried for 2 years channeled through horsehair and wood. She played like she was exorcising demons, like the cello was a weapon and the notes were bullets. The audience was transfixed. Thomas stopped smiling, and Maya realized with crystalline clarity that she wasn't the prey anymore. She was the trap, and it was already closing. The applause was thunder. Maya lowered her bow, chest heaving, sweat dampening the hollow of her throat despite the air conditioning. The audience rose as one, a standing ovation that shook the chandeliers. But she wasn't looking at them. Her eyes found Thomas in the back corner, and the fury on his face was its own kind of victory. She'd done it, performed in front of hundreds, broadcast to thousands, and reclaimed the thing he'd tried to take from her. The stage manager ushered her off as the next performer took position. Maya's hands were shaking, adrenaline, triumph, terror braided together, as she navigated the maze of backstage corridors toward her dressing room. The necklace felt warm against her skin, Minho's constant presence even when he wasn't visible. She almost made it. Maya. The voice froze her blood. She spun, and Thomas was there, having somehow bypassed security, the uniform giving him access he shouldn't have had. He looked different, thinner, eyes wild, the veneer of control completely stripped away. "You really thought you could run from me?" He moved closer, and Maya's training kicked in. She stepped back, keeping distance, assessing exits. "Thought you could embarrass me in front of the entire city?" "I didn't think about you at all." Her voice was steady despite the fear clawing up her spine. "That performance wasn't for you. It was for me." "Lying bitch." The words were venom. He pulled something from his pocket, a small plastic bag filled with white powder. "You're going to come with me quietly. We're going to walk out of here, and I'm going to arrest you for possession. My brother's already prepared the paperwork." Maya's heart slammed against her ribs. "That's not mine. Everyone will know. Everyone will know you're a junkie who ran away with a criminal to fuel your habit." He moved fast, grabbing her injured arm. The pain was sharp but manageable, nowhere near what it had been. "Minho's going down too. Kidnapping, trafficking, corruption. I've been building the case for weeks." He was insane, completely detached from reality. And in that security uniform, with his badge and his brother's protection, he might actually pull it off. "Thomas, please." She let her voice break, let herself sound small and scared, the woman he expected her to be. Too late for begging. He shoved the bag into her clutch, his grip on her arm tightening. "Now move, or I'll drag you out of here." Maya moved, but not the direction he expected. She spun into him instead of away, using his own grip as leverage, and brought her knee up hard between his legs. Thomas's breath left him in a shocked wheeze, his hold loosening just enough. She grabbed the mic stand from the nearby props table, heavy metal, perfect, and swung it at his throat. The impact was solid, satisfying. Thomas choked, staggering back, his face going purple. Maya didn't stop, couldn't stop. 3 weeks of fear and fury and helpless rage poured out in controlled violence. She struck again, this time his wrist, the one holding her, and something in it gave with a crack that echoed Minho's own justice. Thomas dropped to his knees, gasping, You can't." "I already did." Maya's voice was cold, foreign to her own ears. She reached into her dress, the slit that had seemed purely aesthetic actually concealed a sheath, and pulled out the blade Minho had trained her with. Small, deadly, perfectly balanced. She pressed it against Thomas's throat, right where Minho had taught her. Quick, decisive, no hesitation. "Give me one reason," she whispered, "why I shouldn't end this right now." Thomas's eyes went wide with genuine terror. "You won't. You're not a killer." "You changed that." The blade pressed harder, drawing a thin line of red. "Maya." Minho's voice cut through her rage like a blade of its own. She looked up to find him standing in the corridor entrance. But he wasn't alone. Behind him stood Police Commissioner Rodriguez, 2 FBI agents she recognized from the news, and most devastating of all, 3 camera crews with their equipment already rolling. "Step back," Minho said softly. "Let them see what he tried to do." Maya looked down at Thomas, then at the cameras now broadcasting everything. The bag of powder that had fallen from her clutch. Thomas in his stolen security uniform on his knees, her blade at his throat. She stepped back. Thomas tried to stand, tried to run, but Minho moved with that terrible speed and grace, planting a hand on his shoulder that drove him back down. Not violent, just absolutely, undeniably final. Thomas Hayes. Commissioner Rodriguez stepped forward, handcuffs already out. You're under arrest for assault, kidnapping, evidence tampering, and about 15 other charges were still tallying. This is insane, Thomas's voice cracked. She's the criminal, she's with him. He gestured wildly at Minho. He's a monster, everyone knows. Everyone knows, Minho interrupted quietly, that you broke your wife's arm, that you used your position as an officer to cover it up, that you kidnapped her brother, that you just attempted to frame her for drug possession using evidence you planted. He leaned down, his voice dropping to something only Thomas could hear. And everyone's watching. Thomas's face went gray as he realized what had happened. The microphone in Maya's necklace. The cameras positioned perfectly. This entire confrontation had been broadcast live to the gala screens, recorded for every news outlet in the city. He'd been set up, perfectly, ruthlessly, completely. The FBI agents moved in, hauling Thomas to his feet. As they led him away, Minho stepped close, close enough to whisper something in Thomas's ear that made what little color remained drain from his face. Maya didn't need to hear the words. She understood their meaning in the way Thomas's legs nearly gave out, in the way his eyes went wide with the knowledge of what waited for him. Minho had promised he wouldn't make it to the precinct. And Kang Minho never broke his promises. The cameras stopped rolling. The FBI agents disappeared with their prize. Commissioner Rodriguez shook Minho's hand with the familiarity of men who'd done business before. And Maya stood there in her blood-red dress, a blade still in her hand, and realized she'd just crossed a line there was no coming back from. Minho turned to her, and the pride in his eyes was devastating. "Beautiful," he said simply. He meant the performance, the trap, the way she'd fought back. He meant all of it. "Is it over?" Her voice sounded small in the sudden quiet. "Almost." He took the blade from her hand, wiped it clean on his handkerchief, and tucked it away. "There's one more thing you need to do." "What?" "Come back on stage." He offered his hand. "Take your second bow, show them you're not a victim anymore." Maya looked at his outstretched hand, scarred, tattooed, deadly, and somehow the safest thing she'd ever known. She took it. The second bow was shorter. Maya walked onto that stage with Minho's hand at the small of her back, and when the audience saw her, saw them together, the applause shifted into something else. Recognition, understanding, the unspoken acknowledgement that they'd all witnessed something that changed the narrative. She wasn't the victim who'd escaped. She was the queen who'd executed justice. But as soon as they left the venue, as Minho's car pulled away from the flashing cameras and shouted questions, Maya started shaking. It began in her hands, then spread through her entire body, violent tremors she couldn't control. "I almost killed him." Her voice sounded foreign, hollow. "I had the blade at his throat and I wanted to. God, Minho, I wanted to." "I know." He pulled her against him and she went, burying her face in his shoulder while the city lights blurred past the tinted windows. "But you didn't. You chose control. That's what separates us from men like him." "Is he really gone?" She pulled back enough to see his face. "Tell me the truth." Minho's expression was answer enough. That careful emptiness, the one he wore when discussing business. Thomas Hayes was involved in a transport accident approximately 43 minutes ago. The van carrying him to county jail was struck by a vehicle that fled the scene. There were no survivors among the prisoners. Maya should have felt horror, should have felt guilt or remorse or some shred of humanity at the news of a man's death. Instead, all she felt was a crushing, liberating wave of relief, so powerful it made her lightheaded. "Good," she whispered. Minho's eyes darkened with something that looked like satisfaction, pride, possession. "Good," he echoed. They rode the rest of the way in silence, his arms around her. Her face pressed against his chest where she could hear his heartbeat. Steady, unhurried, the rhythm of a man who'd orchestrated death and felt nothing but certainty. The penthouse was dark when they arrived, rain beginning to streak the massive windows. Maya moved through it like a ghost, still wearing the crimson dress, the necklace Minho had given her warm against her skin. She should have been exhausted, should have collapsed into bed and slept for days. Instead, she found herself drawn to the music room. The cello waited where she'd left it that morning. A lifetime ago, it seemed now. Maya picked it up, carried it to the main living area and stepped onto the balcony. Rain immediately soaked through her dress, plastering it to her skin, but she didn't care. She needed to play. Minho found her there minutes later, the bow already moving across strings, rain and music blending into something primal. He didn't tell her to come inside, didn't worry about the instrument getting wet. He simply stood in the doorway, watching as she poured everything into the performance. This wasn't the controlled, perfect execution she'd given the gala audience. This was raw, wild, the sound of a woman who'd walked through fire and come out forged into something harder, sharper, more dangerous than before. When the last note faded into the sound of rain, Maya lowered the bow and found Minho watching her with an intensity that made breathing difficult. "That," he said quietly, "is who you really are." He crossed the balcony, rain immediately soaking through his expensive suit like he didn't notice, didn't care about anything except reaching her. His hands framed her face, rainwater streaming between them, and Maya had never felt more alive. "I need you to understand something," Minho said, his voice barely audible over the storm. "This isn't temporary. This isn't me protecting you until the danger passes. This is forever. Forever is a long time for a man like you." Her hands came up to grip his wrists, feeling his pulse, strong and steady, beneath her fingers. "Then it's fortunate," he murmured, "that I'm a patient man." He released her face only to reach into his jacket pocket, producing a small box that somehow remained dry despite the rain. "I'm not asking you to marry me because you need protection. I'm asking because I've wanted you since the moment I saw you play 5 years ago. And having you in my life these past weeks has only confirmed what I already knew." He opened the box. The ring inside was stunning, a black diamond surrounded by smaller red stones set in platinum, dark, beautiful, absolutely perfect. "I'm not offering you safety, Maya. I'm offering you vengeance and devotion, empire and equality, a life where you never have to be afraid again because everyone who even thinks about hurting you will have to go through me first." His eyes held hers, unflinching. "I'm offering you everything I am, monster, king, killer, yours, all of it." Maya looked at the ring, then at the man holding it. The man who'd broken into her life and rearranged every piece, who'd taught her to fight back, who'd orchestrated Thomas's death with the same casual efficiency he brought to everything else. The man who'd saved her, not because she needed saving, but because he'd wanted her for years and finally had an excuse to take what he'd been denied. It should have terrified her. It didn't. Yes. The word came out certain, powerful, irrevocable. Minhu's smile was devastating. He slid the ring onto her finger, a perfect fit, because of course he'd known her size, and pulled her into a kiss that tasted like rain and victory and dark promises that would take a lifetime to fulfill. They went inside eventually, dripping water across expensive floors, leaving a trail of wet clothes toward the bedroom. The cello remained on the balcony, rain streaming down its curves, a silent witness to the moment Maya Wilson chose to stop running and start ruling. Morning came with gray light and the buzz of Minhu's phone. He answered it still in bed, Maya curled against his side, her head on his chest, the black diamond catching the dim light. "Turn on the news," his associate said. "Channel 7. Minho reached for the remote and they watched as the morning anchor delivered the story with appropriate gravity. Transport accident. Tragic loss of life. Thomas Hayes among the casualties, along with 2 other prisoners and the driver. Investigation pending, but early reports suggested mechanical failure. No mention of foul play, no suspicion, just another unfortunate accident in a city full of them. Maya reached over and turned off the TV. "Any regrets?" Minho asked quietly. She looked at him, this beautiful, terrifying man who destroyed her husband to claim her, and felt nothing but certainty. "None." "Good." He pulled her closer, his lips against her temple. "Because you're mine now, Maya, completely, irrevocably, forever." "I know." She tilted her face up to kiss him, slow and deep and full of dark promises. "And you're mine." Outside, the rain had stopped. The city spread below them, washed clean, full of new possibilities. And in a penthouse high above it all, a queen learned to love her monster. If you made it this far, you know this isn't your average love story. This is what happens when romance collides with darkness, when salvation comes wrapped in danger, when the man who saves you is the most dangerous thing you've ever encountered. Hit that like if Minho's brand of devotion made your heart race. Subscribe because you're clearly addicted to the ruthless kind of love, and drop a comment telling me whose story you want next. Because in this world, every monster deserves their muse, and every queen deserves her throne. Welcome to Omega's Romance Libraries, where happy endings come with a body count.